Amelia, can you hear me?
I can now.
Thank you.
That was the first thing I heard.
I wondered. Would you mind giving us an overview on House Bill 2313? I thought it would be best to start with a refresher since it's been a few weeks.
Certainly. To begin with, House Bill 2313 had to do with a property tax exemption for motor vehicles, and it would allow an exemption for up to 2 motor vehicles for Kansas National Guard and reservist members who are in good standing. And it would begin with 2022. But in committee, if you will recall, and just as a refresher from where we were before the break, there is a handout that you may have with you today, Madam Chairperson.
Actually, Amelia, I have a copy of those that you were gracious to provide, and so we're distributing those right now.
Great. And it is up in the right-hand corner for everyone's reference. It's RS 2150. And this is merely a copy of what was handed out a couple weeks ago in committee on April 7th. So you have seen this before, but I'm handing it to you again in case you didn't bring it with you or just as a refresher. This is kind of where we were when you started your meetings on April 7th. The top is titled Proposed Senate Substitute for House Bill number 2313. And you will see the first new sections, I believe 1 through 14, are relating to a new program that would provide property tax relief or partial refunds to certain businesses that were impacted by COVID-19 related orders, which shut them down or restricted their operations. And then new section 15 is, if you will recall, that language there is from Senate Bill 149 with some modifications that the committee made during the process over the course of a few weeks there. Having to do with reimbursement to certain property owners or operators of businesses of property taxes from the county level, or it was a process through the county, but it was expanded to operations where operations were limited by the state, county, city, or other political subdivision of the state. There were modifications made to 149. And then section 16 is actually the provisions from House Bill 2313 having to do with the Kansas Army or Air National Guard members and the property tax exemption. And then, so that's kind of a recap of what's in that proposed Senate substitute version that is there. Then on April 7th, you continued to work the bill. And as a refresher there, if you turn to page 2 of that RS 2150 that you have in front of you, on page 2, there was an amendment adopted that would change the total of $350,000 there in the very first line. It currently reads, has not received more than a total of $350,000 in prior COVID-19 related local, state, or federal funding or any combination thereof. That was reduced to $150,000. And that has to do with a qualifying claimant for the new partial refund program through the state. In addition, there was discussion and the adoption of a proposal having to do with establishing a property tax rebate when governmental entities directly compete with certain for-profit businesses. And it was a section, it was partially conceptual, partially based on a handout that was provided at the time during the April 7th committee meeting. I'm just looking for a copy of mine. Okay. This was a program that would apply to government entities, which was defined as the state or any county or city. And it would provide a tax reimbursement, tax rebate, if a governmental entity directly competes with a for-profit business located within that governmental entity's taxing jurisdiction, based on the property tax that was levied by that taxing jurisdiction. There were some additional conceptual amendments added to that provision during the meeting. One required that the governmental entity be charging a fee. Also, that the for-profit business would be required to be in existence and operating in the governmental entity's taxing jurisdiction prior to the time the governmental entity commenced or began its competing operation. There was also a provision that would exclude a for-profit business from the program if they owed any delinquent taxes to the state or any political subdivision of the state. There was an exclusion that these provisions would not apply to childcare services, and the program would sunset after 1 year. So it would only be applicable at this time to tax year 2023. In addition, there was an amendment adopted relating to the 20 mil statewide levy for schools. And I believe I also have provided a copy for your reference only of Senate Bill 277 so that you can see what the language would look like and the two statutes that would be amended with this adopted amendment. It would extend the 20 mil levy for schools that is found in KSA 725142 for the next 2 school years. The school years 2021 through 2022 and 22 through 22 to 23. And it would also amend KSA 79201X. This is the residential exemption for the first $20,000 of appraised value of residential value from that 20 mil levy. And it would extend that exemption to tax years 2021 and 2022. And that, I believe, Madam Chair, is where we are right now.
Thank you, Amelia. Committee, I know we did a lot of work on this. We've got actually some excellent legislation here. We did take an attempt to look at an issue that has been facing us for many years. It's not a new issue. The government competition against private industry. I know some would expand that to nonprofit also. There's been much information. We've done some research over the break, and I think at this time we would consider a motion to reconsider. Senator Stephan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I couldn't agree more. There is a lot of good legislation in this bill, but I do want to make the motion that we reconsider the government competition amendment aspect of the bill.
Thank you, Senator. Is there a second on the motion? It's been moved by seconded by Senator Baumgardner that we do a motion to reconsider. Senator Stephan. Do you want to make the motion to withdraw?
I do. I would like to make the motion that we withdraw the government competition amendment at this time.
Okay. It's been moved by Senator Stephan, seconded by Senator Baumgardner. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Actually, I need to vote on the reconsider first. let's clear the table on that motion first. Any discussion on the motion to reconsider? Or that's a non-debatable motion. So we need to vote on it. Senator
Just,
Rowland.
just on the motion to reconsider, I want to be sure I understand. That means he was on the prevailing side.
He was.
Okay, I mean, this thing passed like 2-1, right? Okay.
I don't remember the count, but
Okay, I just
he
said-
was on the prevailing side.
Okay. No, that's fine. I just want to be sure that, okay.
Yeah.
That's how we're doing.
Yes, thank you. So no discussion on it, but all those in favor of the motion to reconsider, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Back on the motion to withdraw? Or you would like to withdraw your motion? I don't think we have to vote on that. That's just, let's go ahead and vote on it, just to be clear. I'd rather discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're back on the bill and Amelia's overview. Committee, I do have a suggested motion I'd like you to take a look at. As I said, this issue has been around for years. It's not new. But this committee does like to solve problems, which I appreciate so much. And it was suggested that we have a legislative post-audit, and we could consider an interim committee also for interim study. This language is just for us to begin discussion committee. Senator Holland.
Madam Chair, I can agree with you more. We have batted this around, whether it was for the health clubs and other types of issues. I think this makes sense, and so at the appropriate time, I'd like to move that we amend this into the underlying bill.
Thank you, Senator. So it's been moved by Senator Holland, seconded by Senator Baumgardner. As the current language before us, are you guys acceptable with 2021, the year? You don't want to make any amendments to this? No, okay, seeing none, we'll vote on the motion then. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Is the committee have any interest on an interim committee on this, or would we like to wait and see what the legislative post-audit reveals? All right, that sounds like productive work to me. Senator Alley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we know a schedule when, how long they are going to take?
We do not. I did visit with the chair of legislative post-audit because what this will do is they get 5 discretionary audits a year, and this will take the place of one of those audits. So they'll be down to 4 discretionary audits.
And then if you have a interim committee, do you anticipate that being before session next year?
We would try to have it in December if we did. I will check with legislative post-audit to get an ETA on when they would begin and possibly complete this audit. Then we could decide if we wanted to request interim this year. Any other questions or comments? We're back on the bill. Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to ask a question because it was asked of me during our break, and I didn't have a good answer for it. But when we look on page 2, we have a list of what's not included. And the question that was asked of me, it was actually during my dental visit, because many dentists were closed during COVID. And we are excluding them. And when you look at that list of hospitals and healthcare providers, we know that physicians did virtual visits, psychologists, psychoanalysts did virtual visits, and we say, but not including personal service providers such as massage therapists and chiropractors. In fact, when you go online, you'll see different counties that and even Delta Dental, where only in an extreme emergency, so an abscess or something like that, were dentists even allowed to, and those were specialists. So could someone clarify to me so that I can share it with the dental community as to why they were excluded from this?
Thank you. Amelia, or Eddie, are you online? And I think it was optional for dentists.
I am online, Senator.
Eddie, do you have any information on that?
I do not. I am not aware as to how the list of exclusions came to be put
And
together.
if I may, I think it says that if you were stopped from operating, so they would, it's not, they don't have to be this list was not a conclusive list. Am I correct, Amelia? The language was intended to be that if you were shut down.
This list on page 2, which is part of new section 2, subsection B2, it reads, claimant shall not include, and so these would be ineligible entities for this to make a claim pursuant to this program. But I don't have, other than what is written here, I don't have any additional information I can share regarding how that list was put together.
Committee would, I think maybe an amendment would be in order to clarify that if you were a business that was shut down, then you would qualify if you met the other parameters. Would that be correct? Wasn't that the intent? Senator Holland.
Madam Chair, in general, yes, that was the intent. However, that was a number of weeks ago, and I think I'm the culprit here because I had some sources that I referred to other pieces of legislation, I think from other states, that I got that information from. If the good Senator Stefan would like to weigh in on some of this, I'd have to go back to my notes and see if the dentist was explicitly put in there or not. My guess is that for a lot of these dentists, particularly if they have a lot of employees, they probably received, I would think, some significant PPP assistance from the government. And I think this was more of a concern of being sure we're covering those non-essential businesses that were shut down or have retail curfew operations.
Senator Stefan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think that's a great point. The intention was the so-called non-essential employees. But in healthcare, that filtered out in a very odd way. And I do think that those dentists who are self-employed, have their own practices, their own practice locations, they were not deemed essential. You know, my medical practice was not deemed essential. And so it was 100% shut down. So with that in mind, you know, I'm not inclined to see dentists that are, say, employed by a federally qualified healthcare facility. I don't think they should qualify, but I do think it would be perfectly fine to see self-employed dentists with actual storefront businesses be included in this. I'd be for it.
So I would ask the committee if they would entertain, instead of trying to list it out, to specifically use language that says that they were deemed a non-essential business and shut down during the pandemic or during X time frame. Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if I might, this is an area that I know a little bit about, but most dentists in Kansas are private practice, and they have their own practice. They can't practice. Their hygienists can't practice unless they're physically there. So most dentists have one or two hygienists, and couple assistants, and a front desk. And so most of them had to lay those folks off, and they only went in if it was an emergency. And if you look at, if you just do a little checking, like even Sedgwick County had its guidelines for only for emergency services. And again, that's going to be if someone falls and chips a tooth, or if they've got an abscess, but they were deemed non-essential.
Senator Steffen.
Thank you. And I'd like to take this opportunity to just have on the record that my medical practice deals with people with, significant herniated discs that stand to lose limbs, use of limbs, and they were not allowed to be seen. And I don't want to forget that, because I am not happy with the way we granted this liability waiver to hospitals and such. That's a mistake. But I frankly, looking at that list, I would recommend that we take dentists out of there and leave the rest. The rest have telemedicine opportunities and some of that, but I'm open to discussion.
Senator Holland.
Madam Chair, yeah, at this point, I mean, as late as we are late in the session here, I'd much prefer just to strike dentists from the list and leave the list as it is. We put a lot of time and thinking into this 2+ weeks ago, and for us just to make an overarching statement and to obliterate what we have here, I'd feel really uncomfortable. I think I'd lose control in my mind as understanding who's in or out. So I would be happy to make a motion to strike the word dentist from subline F there or whatever under 2 at the appropriate time. But I would just ask the committee, we put a lot of time and thought into this, and I would just be afraid to do something major rework at this point on that language.
Senator, the motion's in order.
I would move, Madam Chair, that we strike the word dentist from paragraph 2, section F, page 2.
Second.
Second, thank you.
It's been moved by Senator Holland, seconded by Senator Baumgardner. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Back on the bill. Senator Alley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there an appeal process? For instance, if one of these listed companies or businesses were not included or were included and they don't feel like they should have been, is there an appeal process to go to?
It's an excellent question. Senator Holland?
No, let's ask Amelia.
Amelia, do you know?
I do. I can answer that question, Madam Chair. If you turn to page 9, new section 14 does address this, and 79, let me double check that I'm referencing the right section here. But I believe 79, 3226 is the appeal rights that apply to income tax provisions, and so it would apply here as well, that they could make an appeal of a determination.
I'm sorry.
Senator Holland?
Amelia, I'm sorry, can you, where's that again? Page 9, okay.
It's on page 9, it's new section 14, and it reads, to the extent applicable, the provisions of KSA 793226 shall apply to claims for refunds allowable pursuant to this act that may become in dispute. And 793226 are is the informal conference and final determination provisions that start the appeal at the Department of Revenue.
Madam Chair, a question for Amelia.
Senator Holland?
And Amelia, on this deal, so they're going to be making application when they file their income tax return, correct?
Well, technically it's a claim. I mean, the provisions, actually, because we're already past, for tax year 2020, we're already past April 15th, or we're close to being past May 15th. I believe the deadline for filing both tax years claims is April 15 of 2022, and I'm trying to find the provision. It is new section 6 on page 7. The claim shall be filed on or before April 15th of 2022 for both tax years, except that the Director of Taxation may extend the time when good cause exists, if the
Okay,
claim has been filed within 4 years.
Okay, so while this is a rebate, this is not, I mean, it's not like our homestead or a safe senior where this is going to be tied to doing an income tax return, or is it? Or the reason why I ask is I'm wondering if, since we're giving them up a year, correct, to file this into 2022 for really, in essence, tax year 2020, they would have time to come back later. And I suppose if we need to make a policy change, we could extend that deadline even further for tax year 2020. Say, in fact, if we say forgot about a segment of businesses, correct? We could always leave that option open where people could go back later on and retroactively file for the benefit for 2020. If for some reason we miss somebody, we want to make that change, correct?
I would think you could make you could, if this were to pass and you were interested in making an amendment to the program, that you could make it retroactive if you so choose.
Right, so I guess just to kind of round off the discussion, there may be a number of appeals made where maybe people rightfully feel they should get this. We may find in the thing, oh, but it really says this, but still would allow the legislation, anything else to come back, and we could open up for an additional year extension if we want to correct that next session, potentially. So in essence, we're not, if somehow excluded somebody inadvertently, we'll have the opportunity to come back and open this up if we need to, correct? Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So Senator Holland, to address that, I would ask that the committee entertain the idea of putting a statement in that basically discuss that if you were if you were not listed and you were a non-essential business that was shut down and still meet these parameters, that you would qualify if we inadvertently left a group out. Senator Holland.
Madam Chair, doesn't our new section 1 little language pretty much tell us, I mean, it specifically talks about COVID-19 Retail Storefront Property Act. I mean, that's specifically who we were targeting this to.
Yes.
So I think we got it covered.
I think we're covered, but Amelia, would you think so?
In the drafting, if you're looking at the language, I think when you look at new section 2 that gives the definitions of claimant, there's a definition of claimant there beginning new section 2, subsection B as in boy, that is very general. It means a for-profit business regardless of legal structure and who has filed a claim and who then meets those qualifications that are listed there, having to do with finances and also having to do, and then later on, there are requirements regarding whether they were shut down by a governmental entity or their operations were restricted. So those are further restrictions. There's not a list of specific business types that are included, okay? It's only in the exclusions in the subsection B2 where claimant excludes some particular items. So really it's a general, if you meet these qualifications, and then there's some specific exclusions.
Thank you, Amelia. That's what we're under the understanding that we are included and that we are covered on this because we list the exclusions. It's the exclusions where we might have missed somebody, not so much the inclusion. Okay. So committee, I would remind the committee that we passed a motion when we started working bills earlier in the year that gave the revisers some latitude in language in order to construct the bill. Everybody's still okay with that, correct? Okay, wonderful. I just wanted to remind everyone so that Amelia does have that latitude, because this is a draft that we were able to look at and make sure that we're talking from the same page. Are there any other amendments? I have one more, if the committee would be willing to entertain it. Pass that out. Thank you. So committee, we passed legislation and it was signed into law this year that gave the governor some leeway on temporary, using past board members for BOTA. It gave her some leeway. One of the language said more than one vacancy had to exist, so there had to be 2 members. And I think the intent was that so that we wouldn't turn down or reject one of the nominees that the governor had sent. That was never going to be our intent, but for comfort, we went ahead and accepted that language. At this time, I would like to amend that language so that it gives the governor the ability, if there's only one vacancy, that she is able to appoint temporary for one or more vacancies. It just says a vacancy. So the Board of Tax Appeals they need the ability to catch up, and I think by allowing temporary Board of Tax Appeals personnel, I think this would help. I would like to go a step further than this, but I think this is at least a step in the right direction. So, committee, any comments? Senator Steffen.
Thank you. I'm trying to skim through this quickly.
It's just the amendments on page
Yeah.
4.
4H. Okay. Okay. Did we get into this, that these people had to be in good standing and without issue?
Yes, that is all, yes, that is all current language. All this is doing is, the language currently reads more than one vacancy on a board exists, and this would change it to a vacancy on the board exists. Are there any questions? Senator Holland.
Yeah, Madam Chair, this makes sense to me. I mean, first of all, it's granting the governor they may, not that they shall. And so I think it's their discretion, and quite honestly, we still have a slot open. So if this helps move the ball forward in getting cases worked and resolved, I think it makes sense for our Kansas taxpayers. So at the appropriate time, I would make a motion to adopt the amendment.
Senator Steffen.
Thank you. Any means by which this could be used to put somebody in there supposedly temporary, but basically make it in perpetuity?
No, it has a limit. It's a 1-year limit.
Okay.
It's the same language that we passed. Yeah, yeah. It's a good question. Any other questions, committee? Senator Holland, your motion?
Madam Chair. I move my amendment.
Thank you.
Move your amendment.
Thank you. It's been moved by Senator Holland. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. It's been moved by Senator Holland, seconded by Senator Tyson. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. So committee, I do not have any other amendments. Are there any other? Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will simply ask this question because I know that my colleague sitting right next to me wants to know the answer also. We both serve on judiciary, and we passed out substitute for Senate Bill 286 today, which is providing that Business Relief Act funds for impacted businesses. So does anyone in the revisor's office, can anyone tell us how, from a Venn diagram standpoint, these two bills might intersect? And I ask that not to create new work, but I think that we do as a legislature, as we are going to ask both bodies to vote on this, that we should have a sense of how broad and how deep is it that we are going about helping our impacted businesses. So has anyone from research or from
I would say,
Advisor's
to
office
answer your
looked at?
question, they have not seen the legislation from judiciary because they are the tax revisers. And you two are the only two that have seen that. And I would also say that 100% reimbursement is, I like the way we went at it. How's that?
It's not 100% reimbursement
It's using 100% of the CARES money. That's
of
what-
what's remaining,
Yeah,
which we know will be negotiated.
which we will need some of
Yeah.
that for this.
I think, though, that a portion of what was in judiciary started in tax committee. Didn't we hear a portion of that in tax committee?
We did hear the bill, and we moved it to judiciary for a reason. There was much more in that than tax reimbursement.
Agreed, but getting back to it, do we have a sense, we'll just start with the bill before us, of how many businesses we
Senator,
believe will be impacted?
Eddie, did you have that information for us? I know you reached out to Revenue. And Senator, you are the only two that are aware of this in the room.
Oh, I see a whole lot of
So-
people sitting in the audience, and they're well
Oh,
aware.
well, on this committee, this body, we have not had time to track what judiciary is doing. And we are definitely coming at this from a different angle than judiciary. So Eddie, do you have that information?
I don't have information concerning the number of refunds claims this might be. What I do have is the Department of Revenue's estimate for what the total refunds might be. They anticipated that for tax year 2020, the refunds would be $44.3 million, of which, of course, the state is responsible for 2/3. And then for tax year 2021, they estimated $24.8 million. I do believe that they might be able to provide some more information in terms of some of the details that go into those numbers. So I will make that inquiry of them, but I don't have it right now.
Thank you, Eddie. Senator Holland.
Madam Chair, maybe some questions for the committee. Maybe it's more for our judiciary members, I don't know. But the Senate bill, that's still in the Senate bill, right? 286? So that's not even a shell that's been through the House. So that would still have to journey over there, correct? And here we're talking about basically language in a House shell Senate sub. So as far as the journey, it sounds like 286 has a much longer way to go across two floors, potentially, than this. And then I don't know, Madam Chair, but maybe I've got the wrong perspective on this, but I always had the sense that maybe a portion of this legislation, not particularly the retro, I think there was a piece we put in there kind of on the fly, but the prospective portion of this was kind of seen maybe as a light version of the 286. And I guess I'm wondering, is that are we thinking maybe it's one or the other at this point and not both? Was there any discussion on that, Madam Chair, if anybody could, on the committee?
I would ask the two on judiciary. Was that brought up in committee? The Judiciary Committee?
It was not, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Corson.
So that was not brought up, and I don't know that it's necessarily one or the other. I mean, I think ultimately it's obviously a policy decision for us collectively to make, and ultimately for the Senate as a whole. So I would just offer this, correct me, this feels like more property tax relief focused. The bill that we debated in judiciary and passed is more lost profits focus. So they're not, I think, the Venn diagram analogy is an apt one, but we did obligate, at least in the current version that passed out of the Judiciary Committee, was 100% of the unencumbered federal funds would go into this fund against which businesses could make claims. So if it stays at that amount, money that would come out of this, we would not have federal money available to make these payments. So I think it's just a policy thing that we can talk about, and just wanted to describe it as accurately as I could.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, committee. I think we go ahead and work this. We are, you know, it's not been any secret that we've been working on this legislation. We've been working it openly for quite a few weeks. So Senator Baumgardner.
Madam Chair, I wasn't suggesting that at all.
Okay.
I think, what I believe we need to grapple with is that Kansans have a sense, current business owners, former business owners, have a sense of what type of relief the Senate and the House are working to get to them, because they had no say over being shut down. We started with really both components in tax committee, and then those got cleaved. You know, the one got cleaved to judiciary. And so one is about property tax. The other is the losses that were incurred by being shut down, and it scales it by the number of days. So my question was really simply, is anyone from research or from the revisers looking at, so just the bill we're talking about here, how many businesses potentially would be positively impacted by this? It grew by a striking dentist, and the same for the other. And is there a crossover so that folks really have a sense of what type of relief across the state might be coming their way? Because I think it's important for us not just to say, we did something for businesses, but for them to really get a sense of how many businesses we are hoping we're never going to make them whole for their losses, but we are trying to help them through the suffering. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Baumgardner. And Eddie, thank you. You're willing to do some research on that. I think we're on general orders tomorrow, and this bill is going to be brought above the line tomorrow. So if you could get that information, I know that's asking a lot.
I will reach out to our judiciary staff, and we'll do what we can to try to get a grasp of what that might look like.
I'd appreciate that. And if you could reach out to revenue and PVD and also try to get some numbers there, that would help also during debate. It'd be appreciated. Any other questions for tomorrow? Those are definitely items that we need to understand. The bill that came, it's kind of interesting the way bills have gone this year, because I got asked about a first-time home buyers savings account bill. Why hadn't tax put that out? Well, it's pretty difficult to pass out a bill that we never saw that went to a different committee. So it's kind of been interesting. But committee, are there any other amendments for this bill? Seeing none. Committee, what are your wishes on the bill? Do you want to? Senator Alley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that House Bill 2313 as amended be voted on and it passed out favorably.
It's been moved by Senator Alley, seconded by Senator Baumgardner. Any discussion on the motion? Senator Holland.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be voting for this one. Obviously, this has a fiscal note. But having said that, I've felt that particularly with Kansas families and businesses coming through a pandemic, you know, I still have concerns about, number one, about these storefront operations, the non-essentials. They took it on the chin. Now, obviously, the feds have been there to help, but I know some of those businesses have not been helped by Fed programs, particularly our very urban communities. And then we have obviously our poor rural areas that did not see the relief that, say, other businesses might have. I think particularly this retro provision is good for that. And quite honestly, even though we're not addressing in this one, I do think something like property tax relief for our homesteads, the fixed income, I think that is something we need to get before the body. So I support this targeted relief, and hope we have a little bit more of here before the session ends, because people do need some assistance. So I'll be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any other comments or questions, discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. The bill passes out. Committee, this is absolutely our last meeting for this session. And I cannot thank you enough for your work. We will be emailing the minutes and for your review and for approval. And I want to, again, thank you guys for all your work. We have an excellent committee. They dig in, come up with questions that, you know, to solve problems and forward thinking. I appreciate it. I'd again like to thank staff, Anthony, Pam, our IT staff. We've had different people throughout. I know Xavier and I don't know your name, I'm sorry. Garrett, okay. And Amelia and Eddie and all the revisors and research. Thank you guys very much, and thank you guys for your patience. We've had some great success this year, and I hope to continue it next year. So we will see you on the Senate floor tomorrow. Thank you. We're adjourned.